Welcome, folks, to another PyMCon interview. Today, I have Maximilian, who submitted a talk he's going to be giving fairly soon here about sports dynamics and sports modeling. But I'm going to let him talk about that in his actual talk. This is the interview where we have you get to know the speakers themselves. So, Max, I don't want to steal your intro. Would you mind introducing yourself?
My name is Max. I'm a postdoc at Bocconi University in Milan. I'm studying economics and finance. I have a PhD in economics, which I just recently finished. And overall, basically it's economics, but let's say my research agenda is relatively widespread, and it's all about like forecasting, prediction, and therefore also a bit of Bayesian modeling in there. Absolutely.
Thank you for running us through your background, Max. I wanted to ask, at some point you didn't have a postdoc and a PhD, and some of us, even like myself, don't have a PhD at all. So between when you started out learning, maybe in grade school, and now to your point where you're doing a postdoc, how did you get introduced to statistics, and how did you learn statistics?
To be completely honest, I started fairly late. Only in my PhD, I really started. During my bachelor's, it was not really a quantitative bachelor, I would say, relatively qualitative. And then in my master's, I got exposed to it, but I didn't really do it properly. Especially, I didn't really do any coding or so. And then to do really statistics, I think coding is essential. And to that, I got introduced, let's say, in the second year of my PhD, and I really started then only in my third year of PhD to really try to understand what's going on when we talk about time series prediction, for example, what I've been mainly doing since my third year of PhD.
And then I want to ask in particular, because this actually took me a long time, is how did you get introduced to Bayesian statistics in particular?
That was also only my third year of PhD. I stumbled into a group of econometricians there at the University of Pennsylvania, and that was, let's say, an inflection point in my studies. And they were all about forecasting, time series prediction, basically. And that was one guy who approached me and said, Max, why not let's do something about climate forecasting? We were already doing something about climate forecasting, but let's do it in form of a Bayesian VAR. Let's collect some climate variables and let's see how future Arctic sea ice will develop. And also to do some structural analyses, basically what happens if there's a shock to CO2, what happens to Arctic sea ice, how are all these variables there behaving. And this is how I got introduced into Bayesian statistics. But it was very early on, let's say, and my understanding was rather rough. So I relied on a package that was coded in Matlab back then. Well, back then, 3 years ago. But this was basically my first, let's say, the first time I got introduced to Bayesian statistics. And from that on, it wanted to learn more about it. I wanted to learn more about Python, and then combining Python and Bayesian statistics. That's how I got into PyMC, basically.
So this being PyMC, kind of have to ask, at some point you moved from Matlab to PyMC. How did you find PyMC, and why did you decide to use that as your probabilistic programming language?
Yeah, so as I said, I started out with Bayesian statistics in Matlab, and it was all in an economic setup. But for some reason, I wanted to switch to Python because I thought, like, in the industry, people are much more or using Python much more than with all the machine learning tools all coded in Python. So I really wanted to understand or to get going with Python. And at the same time, I thought, well, maybe your Bayesian understanding really needs a refresher, or you could dig much more deeply into Bayesian statistics. And then I just typed in Bayesian regression in Python into YouTube, and there were a lot of videos coming up from these SciPy conferences, PyData conferences, and especially the talks with Eric Ma. I found super interesting, all the live coding there. That was super intuitive, very nice. And this is how I got into Python and PyMC in particular. And I thought actually that it's all nice to to look at these videos and all that. It gives you a very nice intuition. But to really understand it, you have to make your hands dirty and get to the data. And that's why I thought I would start a side project beside the projects of my PhD, basically.
That's the 2 tips there are really accessible, right? The YouTube videos I also found were my entry point into PyMC. I had watched a lot of videos from Chris Fonsbeck and others when I was trying to learn Bayesian statistics. And then to your point, then it was a matter of just getting into the models, seeing errors and things like that. So double the amount of data for that particular approach. The last question, which is actually very similar to your answer, but I want to ask it distinctly, is a lot of folks are starting to learn about Bayesian statistics, or they're trying to get better at the application of Bayes' theorem. Do you have any advice from your experience that you would want to give to folks?
I think as everyone knows who ever worked with or try to understand something, I think it's really you have to get your hands dirty. You have to apply it yourself. You have to get some data and work on it to really understand it. Well, maybe not for everyone, but at least really this is my experience in everything that I've done. And everyone also says like you should do something that you like, or use an application that you really like. And I chose that particular application because I thought maybe revive my old passion for sports. And then obviously there's a lot of sports analytics also involved with PyMC, with Chris Fonsbeck and all that. So I thought that's super cool. It's something completely new. But essentially, it's really trying to get some data, trying to answer a question that you predefined, and then try to find an answer to that question. Yeah, if it works out in the end or not, yeah, but at least you probably understood and learned from the mistakes. I think this is the most important thing. Yeah.
Thank you for that answer. The good news for everyone watching is you can watch Max do this as part of his talk. So Max is giving a talk on sports analytics, particularly soccer if you're in the US, or football if you're outside of the US. And all the details for his talk will be in the description below. Just like every other PyMCon talk, you also can go to PyMCon.com, where you'll get links to the Discourse post where we have all of the details and the videos as well. So thank you again, Max, for taking the time for this interview, and thanks for helping put on an event as part of PyMCon.
Thanks for me.